Okay.
Okay. Are there any other
Okay.
changes or concerns? Okay, if not, would somebody make a motion to accept the minutes? If not, would somebody
To make a motion to accept the minutes with the changes.
Okay,
To make a motion to
I
accept the
second.
minutes with the changes.
all in favor? Okay.
Aye.
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 All in favor? Okay, thank
Aye.
you. Second order is public comment. Janice, do you have anybody on the phone? Second order is public comment. Janice, do you have anybody on the phone? That's weird.
Let me unmute the attendees. Attendees, I've unmuted all of you. Are any of you here for public comment, or are you here for specific applications?
Specific applications.
Specific applications.
Specific applications.
Applications here too.
Okay, thank you. I think I'll mute you all, and you'll have an opportunity to discuss your applications.
Okay, thank you, Janice. So the public comment part of this meeting is closed. Next are committee reports. Do we have any committee reports? I could, both John and I could report on minor applications. John, would you like to have a go at that? Minor application?
Sure. We went to look at the proposed facade for First Investors Bank right next to the new restaurant there on Bloomfield. Forget the name. Faubourg.
Right.
You know, they showed us the stone for the stone base that they are repairing and replacing. They showed us, essentially they're going to keep the stucco and match the stucco that's there. They seem to be doing a relatively decent job and open to a few. Someone is making a lot of noise.
Kathleen, you need to mute yourself.
Thank you. They seem to be doing a good job, and they were open to some suggestions in terms of simplifying things a little bit there. So they're doing quite a bit of work on that building. Looks like a nice little project.
Okay, thank you, John. And we also had a meeting with Janice and two meetings actually, one with Jason to discuss some awnings and some signage. One of the awnings was the ice cream place on Bloomfield Avenue. We discussed a new shop going in on Church and South Fullerton called 50, and then another sign that's on the small Victorian building that's on the west side of South Fullerton. And what else was there, Janice? I know that we met twice. I've only mentioned three. I think there were two other ones as well.
Yeah, we had two other signs over on Valley Road in Upper Montclair.
Oh, right. So we looked at those. We made some decisions, and Janice was going to reach out to the applicants. Have you done that yet, Janice? I think I only got communication from you on one of the applications.
I've reached out to all of the first three minor applications.
Right.
I heard back from two of them, but I have not had a chance to reach out to the ones that we discussed this week.
Okay, so when you compile all that, if you would just send me the document that you create, so I could look at it before.
Sure.
Okay, that's great.
Okay.
So I think there should be 5 of them, correct? I think there's 5.
It's a total of 6.
Oh, 6. Okay. Okay, 6. And then the education and outreach. I am working on a individual nomination for a Francis Nelson House at 316 Highland Avenue. I was contacted by the owner of this house last year, actually, and just with everything going on, I wasn't really able to finish the research, but I've been able to get back to his house to look at the documentation that he inherited, which is wonderful. So I hope to have that together for our next meeting in December. And tonight is Liz Ann Renner is actually doing a presentation on Francis Nelson for the Montclair History Channel. So that would be recorded. And if anyone gets a chance to click on and watch it, I watched about the first 20 minutes of it before we came onto this meeting. Are there any other committee reports? Is anyone else?
Of course, the planning board, we discussed on the 9th, basically with 66 Church Street, the new building, and they talked about some of the changes that they've made to the facade, but it was mostly things to do with civil engineering and things like that. Also, I'm on the Development Review Committee, and we were talking about they're going to, on the parking garage on Orange, they're taking out the lift and slide system, and they're going to be changing it. And I think that one of the things we're talking about is maybe there's an encroachment onto city property that we allowed for them for the lift and slide system. But if that's not going to be put in, I think we're going to recommend that it be eliminated. So
They'll have to give them back their $50,000.
that's, you know.
We got for that.
And Steve, just to add to that, I think that the recommendation at the end of the DRC meeting was to send that site plan application to the full planning board. For
Yes,
consideration.
yes, it has to be. We can't do anything about that.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question, Steve?
Yes.
What is the status of that project on Church Street?
The apartment building,
Yes.
we haven't heard anything more about it at the DRC. So
Okay.
planning board, it's just there. I don't know what they're doing with it.
Uh-huh.
I think it'll be approved.
Are you referring to the project on the site of the former parking lot from Haynes?
That's the one I'm talking. That's the one I'm talking
That
about.
was the one that was mostly civil engineering presentation
Yeah.
and some exterior work.
And they're coming back to the planning board at the December meeting to continue their presentations.
What date would that be, Janice?
Let me pull up my calendar and double check. That would be December 4th. Let me think. December 7th.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I still have comments on that project, but I don't know where we are with that. While Kathleen and I were standing on Bloomfield Avenue in front of the Investors Bank project, we looked down the alley of Faubourg. They have a park there, and you could Kathleen, can you turn off your? We looked down the alley between Faubourg and First Investors, and you realize how massive the back end of the project on Church Street will be, and the impact it will have on Bloomfield Avenue. So,
One of the things they did talk about from the architect was designing the building in the round. So they're becoming much more aware of how much it impacts in all directions.
okay, good.
They did a movie presentation showing in 3D and focusing on that perspective, John. And if you watch the YouTube video of the meeting, you'll be able to see the details, because they did go back and add additional details to that viewpoint.
Great. I'll take a look at it. Thank you.
I believe in our recommendations, the HPC requested to have that application returned to the HPC after revisions were made. So I'm hoping that will be effectuated.
There's been no mention of it.
I think that's something that the planning board, we asked for it and the planning board would then decide. So, but if you're interested in in that application, you can always go onto the meeting and voice your opinion there. And I would take Janice's recommendation to listen to the YouTube presentation. So again, that meeting will be on December 7th.
Okay.
So our next order of business is application 2020-30, Ascend New Jersey LLC at 395 to 399 Bloomfield Avenue. This is an application for a certificate of appropriateness. If you remember, last month they came before us, but the updated plans had not been delivered to the planning office in time for us to review it. However, we did make some suggestions to what we had seen, but I would just like to give some background about the building. The building is at 395 to 401 Bloomfield Avenue, is identified in the 2002 nomination report as a 20th century commercial structure that was built circa 1900 and is categorized as a harmonizing building. The building is accentuated with decorative brickwork above the storefronts and brackets which accent the roof and define the storefront bays. And I see that Janice has put up on the screen to the right what Graham wrote, and I am quoting from that. What we're looking at now with these newly submitted plans are how the storefront will fit in with the local historic district. So last month rather, we did have some recommendations which are in the minutes. No, are they in the minutes? Yes. And it said, I'm just going to read this so that we know exactly where we are. The applicant presented their plans to improve the facade. Although plans submitted were not the most recent plans, the commission noted that the storefronts on this building were improved several years ago and the brickwork is in very good condition. The commission stated that the wood cladding should be limited to the interior of the doorway vestibule. The existing brick on the front of the building and on the column should be maintained. The application was continued to November 19th, when the applicant will return with revised plans. And that is where we are right now. So I know that the applicants are here tonight and that you were sworn in at last month's meeting. Jason swore you in. Do they have to be sworn in again, Mr. Krasik?
No, everyone. Is everyone the same people at the last meeting as are here tonight? So.
Good evening, commission members. This is Allison Cassetta, the attorney for the applicant. And yes, we do have the same group as last time.
All right, then I'll just remind them that they were sworn last time and they're still under oath.
Thank you.
Okay, could you just introduce yourselves again and what your relationship is in relation to this project?
Sure, Chairwoman, I think if I do it, it'll make it a little more efficient. So as I said, Allison Cassetta, I'm the attorney for the applicant. And we have with us tonight, Kate Crowther, who is a representative of the applicant. And then Andrea Berardi and Keith Betancourt of BKA Architects. They are the design architects for the project, as well as our planner, Keenan Hughes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now that we have the plans that you want us to consider, and I see Janice has put them up on the screen, can you walk us through and tell us what you propose to do?
Sure. I'd like to ask Andrea and Keith to do that. I think they're better qualified than I am.
Okay.
Yep. Hello, this is Andrea Berardi with BK. So the first screen here is just our title sheet. If you'd like to scroll down, we can jump right to the renderings if you'd like. We did add some more photos of the interior vestibule, since that was something we had discussed at the last meeting, and what materials were in there. So one more slide down would be those photos. Then if we scroll down again, you can see we pulled the wood material, the Nichiha, in to just fill the sign panel between the piers, so we would not be covering those brick piers anymore. It would just be going where, essentially replacing the awning with this material. If we scroll down again, those are the updated renderings. We'd be also applying the same material to within the vestibule, covering the existing brick that had been painted black, along with any of the other storefront there that had been painted black, just to give it a consistent look.
And Andrea, you received and reviewed the updated report from Connolly and Hickey, correct? That was dated November 9th after we submitted the revised plans?
Yes, I believe so.
And that had identified a couple of minor discrepancies between the renderings and the elevations, but those were corrected on the version that's on the screen now, correct?
Correct. So the discrepancy was that the blade sign was not centered on our renderings with the pier. So we corrected that. We also included shop drawings at the end of the packet so that we can see where the storefront is being replaced. Most of it is being replaced in kind. We're just adjusting the mullions on the large window to the right to allow for a large logo. I believe in that notice there was also information about the zoning. So our signage vendor added the compliance for the zoning.
Excuse me, you're breaking up quite a bit. It's hard to hear.
I think we need to go back to only everybody mute themselves except for the person talking.
Okay, so I guess to back up a little bit, we adjusted our blade sign so that it is centered on the pier. That matches our signage vendor drawings. The other comments were with regards to the storefront. Most of the storefront is being replaced in kind. The only difference in the mullion placement will be on the large window to the right. We are doing 2 smaller windows and a large window in the middle to allow for that logo. The signage vendor has also added a sheet going through the zoning ordinances and highlighting how we are compliant. Another request was that we include the shop drawings for the storefront, so those have also been included.
Andrea, I did review it appears that it does conform to zoning, except I'm not sure if the window sign does. What sheet do you have your calculations for the window sign?
Sheet 12. Well, the vinyl graphics are on sheet 12, and then the actual ordinances are on, I believe it's sheet 13. So the next sheet down would go over those.
Because it cannot exceed 20% of each window, and that was whether or not that large, it appears like that large graphic does exceed the 20% window sign.
Janice, if I could jump in for a second, we do have Keenan on with us, and I know that he looked at the drawings and did some calculations of his own to make sure that we complied. So I think it would be helpful if he could chime in at this moment.
Okay.
Sure. Good evening. This is Keenan Hughes. Yes, I did run some calculations on the window signage, understanding that the limitation is 20% of the window area. And our calculations were based on the area of the total sort of storefront window. So for instance, the larger of the two window signs, the area that I used for the base of the calculation included all three of the window panels there. So, you know, they are separated by mullions, but we did calculate the area based on that entire storefront window area. And that would be compliant at 20%. And then likewise for the smaller of the two, that's also compliant.
Usually it's based on the window that it's applied to. But I'll have the zoning officer take a look at that. I think that there should be a condition that any approval is conditioned upon the signage meeting the zoning requirement and getting reviewed by the zoning officer.
Janice, this is Allison. I'm sure Kate will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that stipulation is okay because I don't believe Ascend is looking to go for variance relief. I think they just want to get their approvals and move on with the project.
Okay.
I do not disagree with that statement, Allison. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else you want to add to that description of the building?
Is that for Andrea?
I just want to confirm the windows will be blacked out. I mean, I think you discussed this at the last meeting. So the windows will be obscured, so you can't see in.
I'll let Andrea answer that, but they are obscured now, so that condition is not proposed to be changed, but Andrea can answer your question better than I can.
That's correct. They are going to be covered with a matte charcoal vinyl film.
Because our ordinance has been amended since this was originally done, and windows are now required to be transparent.
Janice, this is subject, is Ira.
Okay.
These shops are subject to, I assume it's still going to be a dispensary, right? So, yeah, right, it's going to continue to be a dispensary. So it's subject to some strict state laws regarding the appearance from the outside and whether and being able to see and not see in. So
I guess my question is, does it have to be 100% obscured, or can it be a percentage, less than 100%?
That's my memory of the law, but maybe their attorney can help.
You know, I'm actually not sure what state law requires, but I would suggest for the commission's purposes that we make this another issue for us to address with the zoning officer, because we have to balance whatever state law requires with what the ordinance requires. So, you know, I think that's a better discussion to have with the zoning officer.
Right. Yeah. The state law just has a lot of, it's fairly detailed in regard to the appearance of the shop. Okay. We'll take a look at it and we'll see.
Okay, so for our purposes tonight, then, commissioners, when you question the applicant, please note that the signage will come back to the zoning official and also the subject of the opacity of the windows. So that doesn't need to be discussed. Any other things, though, can be. Are you finished with your description of the project, Ms. Beretti?
Yes, I believe that sums it up.
Okay. And Tom, may I call on you? Do you have anything to add to your memo and what they're proposing?
So I just want to thank the applicant for actually addressing all my comments and revising the drawings. I think that was great that you did that for us. The one thing I did want to point out to the commission with regards to the storefront windows, this is a perfect photograph that we're looking at here. the applicant is proposing to replace the storefront windows, the door, and all the windows to match the existing. And if you look where it's labeled, or actually where the front door is, or the door going into the building, it looks like that those are replacement windows to begin with, door and windows, and they're set at a lower height than the windows at the bay projection, which I believe is original. And if you could look at the rest of the storefronts, are set at a higher elevation. So it's, storefronts change all the time. I don't know if they're able to raise the height of the door and the two windows on either side to match what the original, I believe, was. But that's just a question for the commission. Everything else I was fine with. They did a great job here, I believe.
Tom, do you think there could have been a transom over those doors, the door space?
I don't know. I didn't look at all the other storefronts. I was just focusing on this one, but it does, there is or was something there. And I don't know if the ceiling height in the storefront has changed, right? Sometimes they drop that ceiling, and which resulted in this lower set elevation for the doors and windows. Yeah, if they could go back up, that would be great.
But that would necessitate a larger door, right? A higher door.
Or a transom.
Or a transom. Okay. So why don't we start with questions from the commissioners? Mr. Rooney, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I think that it's to be commended that they pulled back the wooden covering from the columns on either side, and so it shows a continuation of the entire building. My question is, does it have to be clear anodized aluminum? It's kind of stark, but, and I think that's it.
Okay, Janice, could you go back to page number 6? Where we can see the set, or that's 5. The next one, well, that one's 5. That's good. Thank you for that. Okay. So how about Mr. Reinitz? Do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. Or a comment about this matte, the obscurance of this, I guess it's a display window. My question would be, what's going to be behind that display window?
This is Kate Crowther. Nothing exists there now, I don't believe, or maybe they might have some lights or something, but no product or promotional materials or anything will ever exist there.
Okay, so this is just a comment for Janice in looking at this clear glass versus obscure glass. I don't see any reason why it can't be clear glass with, I don't know, anything behind it, even if it was the wood storefront running behind it, because you could obscure the view with the wall behind this glass, and that would just open it up a little bit. So unless there's some use of that picture, the display window, I would try to make it glass. Is the metal frame around that display window that's existing and will remain existing? It's clear anodized? It's a question.
No, the window is being replaced.
Everything's being replaced that we're looking at.
Yep.
Okay. Is there, and I also want to say it's nice to see that you guys took to heart some of our comments. I think even you probably think it looks better. Is there any reason why?
I just meant that we were involved in these detailed regulations, so I'm sort of remembering those
What's
things.
that? What's that?
No, I said we were involved when it first opened because of the detailed regulations, so I'm remembering kind of what we went through then. So I will check to see what options you have. I believe it has to be dark, but yeah, I just said it's a state law issue. So
Okay.
okay.
But if it's just a matter of looking into the actual store and there's nothing behind the store, this little display window that could easily block off the store, you know, whatever. It's just a comment. I see another solution there. Is there any, here's a question. Is there any reason why these are horizontal faux wood surface? Is there any reason why the interior recess could not be horizontal as well? It looks like it's rendered up and down. It looks like it's rendered vertically inside.
So the idea was to create kind of like a portal where it would wrap, but we're leaving the ceiling to be gyp in this.
I understand, but the way it's rendered is the boards are running vertically where the boards are running horizontally. Can the recess of that you've set back and you're making it out of the material we suggested, can you run the boards horizontal instead of vertical?
I can present that to their internal design team.
Okay. So it doesn't sound like there's a reason at the moment except their design team. Okay, those are my questions. And again, this looks 10 times better than it did before. So thanks.
Okay, thanks, John. Mr. Greenbaum, you have any questions?
Yes. Am I to understand that this storefront within that building itself, is this the only one that steps in from the street and having that vestibule?
We have some pictures that I don't know what number they're on. I think they're in the beginning. I think you can see that.
Can you show us those, Janice? Yep. So there's, because to my recollection, that's the only building, only storefront in that building that actually has a recessed vestibule.
No, the one, I think
It doesn't look like Ani Ramen House or the Indian restaurant do. And then the one next to that, to the west of Greenleaf is what? What is that tenant? I can't see the sign. But anyway, I'm just wondering, has anyone considered not maintaining that recessed vestibule and in fact continuing the storefront in line with the rest of the street frontage?
excuse me, David, can I just jump in a minute? Do you have the drawings in front of you on page number 3? I think it's easier to see rather than from, it's the same one that's up. But if you look at the bottom left, they all have vestibules.
Could we also look at sheet number 4, please? Okay, David,
Yeah.
take a look at the flooring there in the vestibule, the terrazzo.
Yeah,
I'd hate to see that disappear. So that's just
no, I'm not saying it
that's
should
just a comment.
disappear. I'm saying that the storefront, that would be, I'm sure that terrazzo was originally interior storefront.
This is a ramp. It's ramping up. Keep that in mind.
Okay, I just thought it was interesting that at this particular point in time, it would be nice to bring some more uniformity to the various storefronts on the street at this time, and to their advantage, they would gain more square footage.
But I think if you go back to number 3, you can see that there's 3 stores there, and they each have vestibules. I think this one is a little bit more open than the other 2, but they do have those smaller vestibules.
Right.
So may I just add, this is Kate Crowther. So there are a couple of elements, granted, to bump out the exterior would look nice. However, there are a couple of things that work for us with the way that this is set up. One, it allows for patients who are coming to the dispensary, if there are, especially during COVID, a limited number of people allowed inside, they are not queuing on a sidewalk. They are within the vestibule, off of the sidewalk, and under a covered area. So that's one benefit for the patients. The second is in terms of security, being able to have that area monitored by not only a staff member, but cameras, and then lighting that is specific to our cameras so that there isn't an interference. That's also a benefit to us and our neighbors. So I appreciate your point, but I would say that there are reasons why we have not proposed that change.
Okay. Okay, that's it. That was my question.
Thank you. I have a question. Janice, if you could go to number, where's the rendering? Number 6, please. Yes, that board that's up there now, is that considered the full signboard? Because in one of the drawings, it said it was 12 inches high. And I'm just wondering how high that actually is. And whether that signboard is too large. Did you consider bringing the bottom up so it doesn't create a barrier to, a wall to where the ceiling of the vestibule begins?
So it aligns with the bottom of that ceiling, right, or the top of that ceiling right now. The 12 inches comes from the sign itself. So
Okay.
the letters ascend are 12 inches, and then the logo is 23 inches.
Okay, all right, that's my question then. So that it aligns with the top of with the ceiling of that. Because it doesn't align with the awning to the left.
Correct. The intent is to align it with, you can see on the detailed photo page.
Which page is that?
Is that page number 3 or 5? Sorry, the one further down. So the intent is to align it with.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yes, so that awning is actually a little bit lower than the awning to the left. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one more question.
Yes.
The display window, if you look at the lower left-hand corner of this page, the lower left photograph, I see that, it has, some metal detail, and obviously was built years ago. You're proposing to remove that and replace it? Is that what you're suggesting?
No, we're just replacing the window frame itself, not that lower detail.
That doesn't form part of the window. You're saying the window frame sits on top of that detail?
I believe so, yes. That looks like it's a wood trim piece, not part of the window system.
And then what is underneath it? That are we looking at what is that called? That little piece there that meets the,
It's a soffit underneath or something.
right, is that cracked? Is that a crack there? Or something's removed from there?
So that's the tile portion, the base below. So yes, it is cracked, and that would be replaced with the wood paneling.
Oh, so, okay, so the wood paneling, you're proposing it on both sides? Okay,
Yep, on anything that in the vestibule is currently painted black, or a tile like that that is black that's cracked.
okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions from any other commissioners? No?
Yes, yes. One more question.
Okay.
Is there a view showing a cross section through this entry vestibule so I can see the side elevation to the left as you go in?
No, there's not a section of that.
There's no view of that. Okay, so let me just see. What was my question about? So when you apply this wood interior, looks like you're holding it back from the front face of the brick pier. Is that correct? Is that the way I'm reading this? That you're holding it back about 8 inches, 9 inches?
Correct. If you look at the middle photo on the slide that we're on, it would not be covering any portion of the
Of that.
here.
Okay, thank you.
I just have one more question. While we're still on this page, the middle photograph on the bottom line, that it looks like there's a rectangular piece that's outlined in metal. What is that? Right here.
It looks like, I'm honestly not sure. I think it's wood trim that's been painted black.
And you're proposing to?
That would also be covered in the wood to have the consistent look in the whole vestibule.
Okay, because it almost looks like it's been applied to the back wall somehow. But you're proposing to either remove that's not part of the original doorway system, and cover it with the wooden product that you're proposing, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So why don't we start with our discussions? Mr. Rooney, do you have anything would you like to add anything?
No, I don't have anything to add.
Mr. Reimnitz?
A couple things. I think the wood should all run in the same direction horizontally, especially under this little shop window. It'd be a little strange to run little pieces of vertical wood under there. That is one comment. The other comment was something that Steve started alluding to, which is if you're replacing this metal storefront, it's easy enough to get an anodized aluminum that I think in terms of, I agree with Steve, it's a little, I don't know, jarring is the word, but I think it would look better, quite frankly, than it's the bronze aluminum as opposed to the clear anodized aluminum storefront. So those are my two comments.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Greenbaum?
So I would make sure that in our condition, even though the drawing seemed to show that the horizontal paneling for the signage above the storefront It seems not to break the plane and cross into the corbelling of the brick. And I think it's important that it's clearly stated that it should not overlap with the corbelling of the brick. Even though the drawings seem to show that it's below where the corbelling begins, I would want to make sure that that's stipulated in our language, because that's an interesting decorative motif of the building.
David, do we know where it starts? Do we really know where that corbelling starts?
Well, let's say this: it should be consistent with the height of the existing awning or the awning adjacent. That's the only point of reference I can make at this time without being on site. But it should not extend and obscure the brick corbelling. And even though the drawings, as they're shown, don't seem to reveal it, I think it's important that we make that upper boundary clearly marked, saying not to cross that, that horizontal, that line.
Well, we could say that the top of the sign band be consistent with the other awnings on the building, because they all seem to be in a line. They all seem to be in the same line, horizontal line.
Yeah, I think that it should not go any higher than the existing awning or any adjacent awnings. And I'm looking at it now. It seems as if the current awnings do not go above. Presently, terminate at the base of the corbelling, because there seems to be a horizontal limestone band at the same line, the same plane as where the corbelling, I think, begins. Look at the pilaster on the far eastern side. So at any rate, I just want to make sure it's clear that we don't leave that open and subject to, discretion afterwards on their part. I think it's an important thing to preserve that artisan brickwork.
Okay, so, right, so the sign band should be, the height of the sign, the placement of the sign band should be consistent with the awning that's on there now, because I can see from the picture on 03 that the other two, or the other one to the west, the other two, they're stepped. It's a stepped height.
Well,
so they're not in a straight line. They're stepped. Yeah, it's a stepped height. They're not in a straight line. So it can't be consistent with the other awnings. It has to be consistent with the original awning.
Right. The stepping, the stepping is a function, I believe, of the fact that it's an incline on the hill, on the hill.
Right. Yes.
That's all.
Okay. Sign band placement consistent.
And not to obscure the brick corbelling.
Not to obscure. Okay.
And I would also agree with John Reinnitz's suggestion that the cladding on that interior vestibule, if it's going to remain as an exterior vestibule, that should be horizontal. It should be running in the same direction as the signage. And I will make the point, and I probably will be in the minority here for whatever reason, but we have a consistency of storefronts on the street that, do not have this recessed vestibule. And, I believe that we have an opportunity here to create more uniformity and consistency. And I believe that original terrazzo floor was once an interior portion of the building. And again, if we're looking for, historic accuracy, I believe there was a storefront up to the line there. So that would be my opinion.
Okay.
Historic photo, right? Can we go back to that historic photo?
The historic photo shows it being recessed.
Were they all recessed?
Only this one.
It shows it being, the one to the way left is recessed in the middle.
Right.
And this one's recessed just the way it's being shown now.
Okay, so then that was the original. The other one seemed to have bumped out. Okay, well, that was my suggestion.
I think, David, I think
Yeah.
the original probably was most reflective by the storefront on the left, where you see it's between two. The ones on the right look like 40s or 30s or 40s renovations of a storefront, and I think the original sort of look was probably the one on the left where you went in the middle and
Right.
you had flanking, and each one of those were probably exactly like that. I'm guessing. So
No,
anyway,
I would agree.
Okay. Well,
The only thing I would say is, all I was saying is that it would be great to have the consistency and the continuity of the all the storefronts.
okay. Thank you, David. So my remarks would be that I would agree with the bronzed aluminum for the replacement of the metalwork, that the horizontal, that the bands be running horizontal wherever the wood is going to be placed on the interior, and also for the sign band, and also that the sign band retain the current height, that it not go any higher so that it doesn't obscure the corbels. And I think, and then the other two things would be that the signage comes back, and also the opaqueness of the windows come back and be reviewed by the zoning.
Can I add one more suggestion?
Yes.
If with the consideration of the horizontal banding of the cladding material, there should be note to be consideration that it aligns and it with the and it corresponds with the limestone banding running across the building's facades on each pilaster. That there needs to be a consistent a consideration of that band, and that it should harmonize with that.
Do you mean in color or in size? I'm sorry, in color or in size, or what? What are you suggesting?
No, well, I mean, you could. I wasn't suggesting necessarily coloring, but I think that when they line up the paneling, let's say the architect's up in Waltham, Massachusetts, and they're not really looking at it, and they just draw it in, and then the guys come in to do the installation. I want that the architects consider when they do their design that there is that horizontal limestone banding, and that they are sensitive to that in their composition of the wood horizontal banding, horizontal planks. It shouldn't be like split in the middle. Like it shouldn't be like. In fact, if anything, it would be really nice is if the horizontal banding width matched up with the banding.
They have a drawing of this front facade. We could look at it.
Yeah, can we go to that? Which?
The new elevation. Oh.
So you see the banding? There's a, right. It just would be nice if that was incorporated and harmonized with those details, because there's some very nice details here.
Well, is there any indication on how wide the band is on the sign board? Is there any detail of that? Can you find it? Because if there is, then we can look at it and see how wide it is, but we don't know how wide that limestone band is.
I believe the applicant stated that the ceiling in the vestibule aligned with the bottom edge of the sign. So they couldn't go any higher. I think that's what they said.
I think if you look at the 3D view in the upper left-hand corner on page 5, gives you a pretty good idea where the band and the adjacent stone and brick is. I think that's probably about as good as it's going to get.
Well, maybe the bottom of the text of their sign, like the word ascend, maybe that sits on the same horizontal line that would be the sign band, the band across. So that would be determinant of the height of the bottom of the sign, bottom of the lettering. All I'm saying is that those are elements. This is fine tuning, but that limestone horizontal band is an important ornamental motif on the building. And I would hope that the signage and any cladding that they use considers and harmonizes with that.
Okay, so we phrase it by saying a horizontal banding, a horizontal wooden banding
will correspond with, with the horizontal limestone banding in the brickwork. In terms of alignment. And
Okay.
try to show consistency of alignment. It seems in their drawing on H5, bottom left, it seems that the word ascend actually, lands right on the top of that, which looks good. I just want to make sure that in final execution that sensitivity is there. And the same thing with the horizontal banding that John proposed on the interior of the vestibule, that the widths of it, the alignment of the placement of the planks should consider the band, the limestone band.
Okay, we can put that language in. And then is there any language in here which says that the sign band will go into the into the mortar, attached to the mortar, and not go through the brick on the facade?
That's a good point.
Under each note, note 3 and 4, it says that it should be fastened into the mortar joints only. That applies to both the wood and the blade sign.
Okay, great.
I also want to make sure, even though the drawings seem to indicate it, that the any cladding material they use does not obscure the return of the limestone band on the pilaster. Again, the drawings as we see them show that, but I want to make sure when it's built that that's actually in the language. We don't want to obscure the return of the limestone band.
I think that's the wooden cladding in the vestibule is set back 8 inches from the corner.
Okay, as long as it doesn't go over, cross over the pilaster and obscure the band, that's all.
Okay. All right, thank you. So we have, Janice, have you been writing this down? We have 1, 2, 3, 4 conditions, plus the one that they come back on the signage.
I'll read what I have. I have 1, the wood should run horizontally in the vestibule and on the sign band. The metal storefront must be replaced with bronzed aluminum.
Mm-hmm.
The sign panel should not obscure the corbelling of the brick and must be consistent with the height of the existing awning. And that they come back for consideration by the zoning officer for signage and the opaqueness of the windows.
Okay, and then the number 2, I think that you had with the wood, that all the wood in the vestibule, because there's also wood underneath the window on the right. So it should be all the wood in the vestibule.
All applied wood is horizontal.
Right.
Wherever it is.
Actually, just to be consistent, it's actually not wood. It's wood-looking fiber cement.
Yes.
Okay.
Faux wood.
And I'd add that when you mention the horizontal banding, that it is consistent and sensitive to the horizontal banding of the limestone and brick, the limestone bands on the pilasters.
All right, and then everything that all this applied material has to go into mortar joints. You could add that to number 2 with the faux wood that's being applied.
Okay.
And then,
Sorry, this is Allison. I just wanted to ask if we could discuss a little bit further before any decisions are made, the color of the metal. I think we're okay with all of the conditions and I'm not objecting to them, but just wanted to see if we could discuss that one a little further, even if you have more things that you want to cover first, just before the commission moves to make a decision.
Okay, what would you want to discuss?
What do you want to discuss? I missed that.
The color of the metal in the storefront.
Oh, okay.
I'm just going to ask our architects to chime in on it, and just see if we can find a way to either soften the language or reach some kind of compromise on what exactly it needs to be.
I think pretty much this kind of storefront material is like 2x4 profile with the glass aluminum, and it only comes I mean, on the, if it's not powder coated, it's going to be the clear anodized or the bronze anodized. And I think they make even maybe a darker anodized as sort of as off the shelf choices. I guess to discuss it further, I think there's so much going on. I err towards simplicity and making things softer and less jarring. And I think going with the bronze aluminum, the sort of, I don't know, the hodgepodge of windows not really lining up and they're different sizes, etc., tends to recede more into the background. So
I agree, especially because if it is a recessed vestibule and then you have the contrast of presently dark opaque windows with a light anodized, you're drawing excessive attention to something that's really, not, it's too much contrast. You might as well darken it. And then if you do go to clear glass in the future, it'll look just as nice.
Okay, so let's hear from your architect. Do you have an opinion that you?
Go ahead, Keith. Well, let me just quickly say, in terms of appearance, I think you'd have to. These are light colors. It's a light gray. The black is innocuous in comparison. Adding bronze into that is like adding orange. So it might not achieve the look you would be requesting. I'll leave it at that and let Keith go.
Well, let me ask you a question. Is it possible, I'll ask my colleagues this, if the aluminum extrusions that they use were of the same tonality as the paneling, the fiber cement material they use, so there's no contrast, would that work for you?
I don't have any opposition to that. I do have, yeah. Well, let's let Keith chime in because he knows what materials are available.
I'm asking John. I'd like to ask my colleague John Reimitz. John, if the material's tonality, I agree with you, John. In general,
here's the deal, David. Is there's off-the-shelf profiles, and then you can paint it or powder coat it anything you want. I suspect there's a budget here ultimately, and among the choices of what's readily available are the colors that I suggested. On HC07 on the 7th page, if you look at the color of the wood, when you talk about orange and warm color, now my print, that's interesting. On the screen, it looks more cool gray, and on my 8.5 or my 11 by 17 color print, it looks more warm gray. So,
So please let us hear from the applicant. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, this is Keith Betancourt from BK. When we studied this, we looked at it extensively, and to be honest with you, the clear anodized aluminum is the one that seemed to blend the best in regards to the vintage wood finish that we have, as well as the light fixtures that we're specifying on the exterior. So yes, it will contrast a little bit, but it's going to contrast with the window, so each pane will have its own definition. glass, which is something that we do want. We don't want that to look like just a solid dark kind of surface. We do want that to lighten up a little bit in there. And then I think it blends very well with the vintage wood, so that way we have that transition. So we would like to keep it the clear anodized aluminum. We feel that in our studies looks the best.
Well, I think the bottom line is if the windows were clear and the glass was translucent and there was light behind there, then I would agree that that would be fine. But being that right now, the proposition is that they're going to be black and opaque, to me, is problematic.
Well, I would rather, in that case, then I would rather propose that we change the window film to something of more kind of an opaque or a different color window film as opposed to changing the mullion.
I think that's actually a great idea. I think
that's a great idea. I don't think there's anything wonderful about the matte black.
Right, I think that's true.
If you could go with, I'm sure that there's glass screening films that are semi-opaque, so light can pass through, but it obscures what goes on behind, so to speak. It has like a screening effect. Either that, or if you had some kind of a scrim type, roller blind or type material behind the window. And then I think it would be a much more welcoming and warm, and then it would play, then the lighter aluminum color would work.
So I have a suggestion. Why don't we ask them to return with samples of this vintage wood panel, the exact color that we can view on site, and also at that point look at what the anodized aluminum that they're proposing and the backing of the window. I think that could come back to what we call the revisions committee.
I think that's perfect. I think that's perfect.
Chairman Bennett, I just want to clarify what we're talking about as far as coming back to the revisions committee. Would that mean not having to come back for another hearing?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
You make an appointment with the office. Now it would be with Janice, and we'll meet you on site. We'll meet you right there. And it usually works. I mean, if you have it after Thanksgiving, we can meet you then.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't talking about coming back in another month.
No, it's not a full commission. No, not a full commission meeting.
Well, hold on. If there's not an agreement though at the time of the revision commission, then it would have to come back to the meeting, right?
Yeah, sure. The revisions committee consists of Kathleen and myself, and generally we take a hard look at it, and we can sort of. This is one of those minor. I think that's really minor to some degree, and the idea is just to make it blend a little bit more. And if they could come up with a blackout that wasn't black, that would be. I think that would be an improvement. I guess we'd have to see it.
I think I think that has to be looked at as an entire scheme, and
they'd have all the materials there.
Well, they'd have all the materials right there, and then we can look at it, in the daylight, not having, the difference in color between the print and our screen here. So Janice, could you just add that as one condition, that the window film, the piece of the vintage wood, and a sample of the metal come back to the revisions committee, and we'll meet them at the site.
Right, and I think I need to strike the condition about replacing the metal storefront with bronzed aluminum.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, this is Kate Crowther again. So given that I just want to be considerate of people's comfort and sensitivity around travel at this time. So we'll want to coordinate carefully, just because New Jersey, I think, is undergoing new restrictions. Massachusetts definitely is, where I live currently. So I just want to be respectful of that. So in the event that there is a suspension of any type of activities like this, are we able to come up with an alternative?
Kathleen, can we meet with them online as the revisions committee?
Well, why couldn't we? I was just going to suggest that. Why couldn't we meet online?
Yeah. Yeah.
That would be great.
And can I just ask for one last clarification on the conditions? As I understand it, for the window opaque covering and the window sign compliance, the discussion of coming back was to the zoning officer, right? In connection with the building permits. And again, not coming back for a hearing before the commission.
Well, Janice, you would have to answer that.
Well, yeah, you couldn't, if there's a variance, the commission has no role in granting that, then you have to go someplace else, so.
I know, I just want to make sure I understand the conditions as they were read off because the words come back were used. So my understanding was that's something that needs to be resolved with the zoning officer and confirm with him that we don't need any variances. And it doesn't mean that we need to come back for another hearing. I just wanted to confirm that.
Right.
Okay, then, to wrap this up, should we read Janice, could you read through them, the conditions again, so we can?
Again. Okay, number one, all wood should be horizontal and should be adhered to the building through the mortar joints. Two, the sign panel should not obscure the corbelling of the brick and shall be consistent with the height of the existing awning. The application shall be considered by the zoning officer for conformance with the township's zoning requirements for the window sign and the window opaqueness. And the applicant shall meet with the revisions committee for review and selection of the wood color of the wood panel and the anodized aluminum and the window backing material.
And Janice, I think what you should, what is the exact type of material that's going up here? It's not wood. It's
like a heavy plank.
But what do you call, what is the
Cement
applicant?
fiberboard?
Yes, I think you should use that in the rather than wood, please.
Okay.
And Janice, you didn't mention that the panel board should be lapped in such a way as to be
right.
Sensitive to.
It would, yes, it would be horizontal should be consistent with the
Limestone banding.
I'm trying to read my handwriting. Yes, limestone banding on the pilaster.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so this is a certificate of appropriateness, and we all vote on this, correct, Ira?
Yes, so it would get a vote, a resolution and a vote to determine, I guess, what you haven't decided to give the certificate at this time, I don't think. As I heard it, you were waiting for these to resolve these other issues. Is that correct?
Well, we're waiting to resolve the revisions committee issues. So,
okay, so you want to approve the certificate subject to that resolution, so that there won't be a need to come back. Then that's what the resolution should say, basically.
And then do we all vote? That's my question. Everybody votes on. Each individual commission member would vote on this. Yes or no. Okay. Yes. So we would approve this certificate of appropriateness based on the with the conditions that Janice has just read off. I think there were four, Janice. 4 conditions?
Yeah, I read them. Don't make me
you don't have to read them again. I just want to make sure what the 4 were, that there were 4. And also the condition that the materials of the fiberboard, the anodized aluminum, and the film for the windows be returned and approved by the revisions committee. So, would someone make a motion to?
Can we go so far as to say, if legally permissible, that the window film allow for translucency? If, you know, if it's contingent upon New Jersey state law, of course. But would we, given our choice, if there was not an issue with state law, would we as a commission want that to be completely opaque, regardless of color, or would we prefer it, if given the choice, would we prefer it to have translucency? Does anyone, I think that's something we can comment on.
I think the only advantage for translucency is for people inside the space getting light. I mean, how would the translucency? The only thing you would get at night, you'd get some glow coming through the windows, I guess, at nighttime.
I think it's a win-win all around, because people want to know that there's, you know, there's something going on in there. And I mean, if, you know, we're moving to a point of time, presumably, again, this is all state issues, but we're moving to a point of time where if this stuff is being legalized and this is becoming more normalized, the idea of having this black, you know, opaque window thing, to me, it's just a vestige of a different way of thinking. And I think as a retail streetscape, I think it would be nice to show some vibrancy along the streetscape, not that dead zone that we have now.
I agree with you, David. I agree.
And I agree with you as well, David, but I think it's dependent upon what the state mandates are. So I think this would be something that when they come back to the revisions committee, we would look at that.
Right now,
maybe the applicant.
So sorry.
Maybe the applicant should be required to come in and present their knowledge of the state of the laws on that.
Well, might I also ask the architect, since we're on, I don't know if those windows are covered by film or if that is how they're tinted. I would be curious if you're requesting that we replace all of the windows and the door, or if it's a matter of replacing the film. So Keith or Andrea, do you know which it is?
If we do it we would propose it as a film. So at any given time, that film can be removed from the window.
What is there right now? Because right now it's black. I mean, we're replicating what's existing. What's that?
I think now it's painted. I believe it's painted black.
That is not very attractive. Yes, agreed.
So if it was clear glass with a screening, a degree of translucency, and I'm sure there's different films available. In fact, you could get any film, because you know they do, you know, when they do cars and things like that, 3M makes the material.
So David, I think that we've made the point, and that this issue will come back to the revisions committee, and that at the revisions committee we will look at it then.
But could we say in the language of our conditions that contingent upon state law, we would prefer to see a translucency? I think that would be fair to say, because then it's otherwise we leave it completely to their discretion, and I think we have the right to, assuming it's legally permissible, to state this is our preference, and I think that should be memorialized.
I agree.
Okay, so that would be number 5, Janice, correct? You're muted.
My suggestion is that could be a finding of the HPC, not a condition. That the HPC, that the HPC wants to see the window film to be more translucent, depending upon state law. And that way, when the review committee gets it, they'll see, they'll have the benefit of the state law, and they'll be able to see how far they can go, because there are levels of translucency. There's 100%, there's 80%.
Right.
Finding is fine.
Yeah.
So how do you write that into the C of A, Janice? Is that written into the C of A if it's a finding?
It's the C of A, yeah. And then we already have that the revisions committee is going to work with them on the backing of the window, but within the certificate will be the statement that the HPC wants to see the film to be as translucent as possible. And then the responsibility of determining that falls in the conditions to the revisions committee.
Okay.
Okay? I think it'll all be in there. So we need a second.
We need a
first.
We need a first.
Motion.
Yes.
So I'll make a motion to approve the application subject to the conditions and finding of the board members of the of this evening's meeting.
Second?
Second.
I second, Steve.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Should we do individual?
I was going to do individual because otherwise it's too hard for me to follow.
Okay,
All
go
right.
ahead.
Chair Bennett?
Yes, I approve with the conditions that we stated, with the conditions and findings that was stated, and that when the translucency issue be determined by the revisions committee.
But the resolution has it's already, so you don't have to.
Mr. Rooney?
Approve.
Mr. Greenbaum?
Approve.
Mr. Reimnitz?
I approve.
Okay, that way. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
For your time tonight.
Thank you, Ascend people. Goodbye. Have a nice
Bye, thank
Thanksgiving.
you.
We'll look forward to working with you after the holiday.
Same here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well,
Okay, next on our order of business is application 2020-32 United Way of North New Jersey, 60 South Fullerton Avenue. We had also seen this had come before us just exactly a year ago. Hold on, let me just get my notes. Yes, a use variance and site plan for this property was reviewed by the HVC earlier this year, and it was approved by the Board of Adjustment on May 20th, 2020. The commission issued the following findings. However, subsequent to the approval, the governing body decided not to proceed with the proposed senior community center on the property. As a result, the owner has notified the planning department that they are not proceeding with the approved site plan. They are, however, moving ahead with improvements to the property. This application for a certificate of appropriateness is for the following: window replacement, which is in-kind replacement, masonry and metal restoration work, which is in-kind replacement, new exterior signage, new exterior building mounted and site lighting, HV upgrades, new refuse enclosure, improvements to the existing garage structure, repaving the driveway and parking lot, replacing the existing guide rail along the driveway, and creating a compost area. Now, this subject property, known as the Social Services Building, is a local landmark property as noted under Montclair Code 347-150.1. Building was constructed by the DeVille and Mills Foundation and dedicated to social services use. In addition, the Avis Campus Memorial Garden located in the rear of the building are included in the landmark designation. It is a neoclassical colonial revival style, built circa 1950, designed by Montclair architect William Orrin Bartlett, and is identified, as I said, as a local historic landmark in the preservation element of the Township Master Plan. And the site features a two-story building of brick with limestone detail, the Avis Campbell Garden, and the garage building of similar detail to the rear of the building. So we have Paul Pionis and his group are doing the work on this, correct, Janice?
That's correct.
And are they here tonight?
They're here. Yep.
Okay, so why don't we have Paul, or is it Jackson, here tonight?
Paul Jackson, the client, Mark Munley's here, and David Owen, the attorney, are all here.
Okay, great. Would you all identify yourselves with your relationship to the project?
Well, I'll swear.
Can I swear you in?
Yeah,
sure.
Let me swear you in, and then you can identify yourself. So Jackson, Paul, and Mark. Okay, could you raise your right hands, please? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're going to give this commission is the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, then each of you in turn just identify yourself and again your relation to the project.
Paul Sionis, project architect.
Jackson Bangs, architect.
David Owen, attorney.
Mark, how about you? Mark Monday, he's sworn in.
He needs to unmute himself.
Oh.
Mark, you're unmuted if you want to speak.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for hearing our application tonight. I'm Mark Munley. I represent the owner of the property, and I am also a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey.
Okay, thank you. What we'll do now is if you can go through the proposal that you have for this building, and please keep it, your remarks to the application for the certificate of appropriateness for the things that I mentioned before, such as the window replacement, and ending with the compost area.
Okay. Kathleen, this is Paul Sionis. So I will go through the PowerPoint and review what we were asking for a certificate of appropriateness for. We're only asking for a certificate of appropriateness for specific items, not everything that you listed or read. So we're breaking the project into segments or incremental stages, and other items will require an application to the Development Review Committee, during which time we'll return back to the Historic Commission. So Janice, if you could turn to the second slide.
Okay, may I just note that what I read was the memo from the planning department. So I just want to make sure that's on record. Okay, Paul.
Thank you. So on this slide is a copy of the memo from the HPC consultant, Tom Connolly, on the left side of the slide. And certain work has already been approved as an in-kind restoration. So that includes the items I list on this slide, which are spot repointing, cleaning and repair of the masonry, metal railing and balustrade restoration, window replacement with new historically correct windows, and front and rear entry repairs. So all of those items we won't discuss tonight. Those have all been deemed to be in-kind restoration. And as per Tom's memo, where I underlined, it says the proposed scope of work is also in keeping with the work previously reviewed under application number 2660. So as I said, we're breaking this up into increments, and we're only asking for a certificate of appropriateness for very specific items tonight. So Janice, third slide, please. Third slide shows the survey map of the property, but it's been colored for better visibility. The majority of this building does not have central air conditioning. If you look at the building, there are many window air conditioning units that completely surround the perimeter of this building. Part of the proposal is to remove those window air conditioning units and install new HVAC throughout the building. There are also existing ground-mounted HVAC units, in particular in those three areas where I circled in red. So our proposal is to remove all of the ground-mounted units to improve the appearance of the grounds, remove all of the window units, and then to place all of the HVAC units up on the high flat roof of the building. Next slide, please, Janice. So slide number 4, these are site diagrams that we prepared looking up to the roof from 3 different locations. And as I'll explain over in the next 3 slides, is that the new HVAC units will not be visible at pedestrian eye level from the public right-of-ways or the rear of the property. So next slide, please. Slide 5. This is a view from in front of the public library. So we have 2 pedestrians, a 6-foot tall person and a 5-foot 6-inch tall person in this first of the next 3 diagrams. So this shows that from the eye level of the 6-foot tall person, no HVAC units are visible above the parapet wall of the Mills Memorial Building. So there's a approximately 4-foot 2-inch high parapet wall around the top of the building, and the units will not be visible. In addition, you can see to the left side of the front of that Mills Memorial Building, there's that tall attic space with the slate roof, and that hides most of the rooftop from South Fullerton Avenue and beyond. Next slide, please, slide number 6. So slide number 6, this is the view from the South Fullerton Avenue public sidewalks looking west. So we're showing pedestrians on the westerly public sidewalk and also on the east side of the street. And again, you can see that there's no view by the pedestrians of the HVAC units because of the parapet wall. There's the top of one HVAC unit projects above the parapet wall. It's a 4-foot high unit sitting on top of I believe a 14-inch rail. So that will project above that parapet wall, but it would not be visible by pedestrians on the sidewalk. Next slide, please, number 7. This slide shows the views from the Avis Campbell Gardens and also from the very rear of the property. The Avis Campbell Gardens are directly to the rear or to the west of the building. And then there's a large parking area. And at the very rear of the parking area is the adjoining property, which has a carriage house on that property. So pedestrians standing all the way in the rear of the property would see possibly the top 4 inches of the HVAC units closest to the rear of the parapet wall, the rear of the building, all the way from that rear westerly side of the property. Anyone standing in the Avis Campbell Gardens will not see any of the HVAC units as shown in this diagram. Next slide, please. In order to install the HVAC units, the new louvered vents are required to be installed in the existing exterior brick walls. So this is the west elevation, which is the very rear of the building as seen from the Avis Campbell Gardens. So one new louvered vent is proposed that's 4-foot 1 inches wide, 1-foot 7 inches high, painted to match the brick. It's shown just to the left of and just above that rear entry, that rear portico entry. There's an existing vent that's probably been there for 50 years all the way to the right above one of the first floor windows, but that's an existing vent. So we're proposing one new louvered vent for fresh air intake for the new central air conditioning for the first floor of the building, for the rear portion of the first floor. Next slide, slide number 9. Slide number 9 is a view of the north side of the building. This is the north elevation that's along the driveway that leads from South Fullerton Avenue back to the rear of the property. So 2 new louvered vents are proposed on this elevation, one towards the front of the building, above the 3rd window from the left on the 1st floor, and then one above one of the blanks. There's a brick blank, 2 brick blanks along this facade that are existing since 1950. So two louvered vents are proposed on this side, again for fresh air intake for the first floor central air conditioning. Slide number 10, please. Slide number 10, this is the south elevation of the building. This is if you were standing in the Summit Medical Building parking lot, which is adjoining Union Street. So one new louvered vent is proposed to be installed on this elevation, and you can see the blue dimensional arrow pointing to that. So again, they're all the same size, 4'1" by 1'7", and all to be painted the same color as the brick to blend in with the brick. So those are the 4 louvered vents that are required for the new central air conditioning installation. If we go to slide 11, please. Slide 11 is the front view of the building, and no louvered vents are proposed for this front elevation. So that's not being touched. Slide 12, please. Two other items we're asking for a certificate of appropriateness for, and that's the photo on the left is the existing barrier-free entrance that's accessed from that north driveway. It's a non-conforming barrier-free entry. The stoop is not wide enough, doesn't comply, doesn't have the 5-foot diameter turning radius on that stoop. It's a little bit too short in width. The handrails are not continuous onto the top stoop. And the other item is the window well covers. As you can see in that photograph on the right, these are typical images of the window well covers for the lower level of the building. Years ago, someone installed plastic window well covers over all of those lower level windows. The plastic's broken on 90% of those window wells. So next slide, slide 13. Slide 13, there's a drawing of what's proposed. The image on the left is a plan of the ramp. The ramp will remain, but we're proposing to infill a portion of the step with new cast stone or limestone to match the existing stone, and then to redo the railing. It's an existing black painted pipe rail, but we'll continue the rail so that's continuous right up to the top of the stoop, and then continue back down the 2 steps. The building has existing pipe rail in this location. There's an entrance to the garden club, has the original pipe rail from 1950 that we're matching, and then around the north side there's also the pipe railing that this will match. So it's consistent with the building to match the original pipe rail. And then the bottom 2 images on this drawing show that we're going to remove all of those plastic window well covers, install new tempered glass window well covers over all of those lower level windows. The window wells are all surrounded with poured concrete walls. Next slide, slide 14, please. One of the problems with the building is that there is actually no or very limited cell phone reception within the building. People who've worked in this building for the last 70 years, well, we've only had cell phones for the last 10, 20 years, but there's no or very little cell phone reception. We've worked with a consultant, and the proposal is to put something called a cell phone repeater. And the cell phone repeater would be mounted to the south side of the rear brick stair tower, and then it gets wired into the building. And it's the pole would be fastened into the mortar joints of the brick stair tower. On the right is an image of what this cell phone repeater looks like. It's basically like a glass tube that's 2.5 inches in diameter, 9.8 inches high, and then it gets mounted to a 1.5 inch diameter by 4-foot metal pole, and that pole gets mounted to that side of the stair tower. And the whole purpose of the cell phone repeater is to boost cell phone reception within the building. Next slide, please, slide 15. The building has a lack of lighting on the exterior, so we're proposing several new light fixtures. So on this slide 15, the top image across from left to right is light fixture C, which is a ceiling-mounted light fixture that would be installed under the front and rear portico roof. So this is a very low-level, 1.5 inch high LED light fixture that would serve both as a light fixture to provide safe lighting under the portico roofs, and it would also serve as a emergency lighting with a backup battery within the fixture. So this is necessary both for safety and for code to have the emergency lighting at the front and rear entrance to the building. And we picked out one that's pretty nondescript. Light fixture B on the bottom left of this are wall sconces. There's very limited lighting at the doors, entry doors to the building. This is a fixture that's 20 inches high and it's 7 inches wide, 4 inches deep. It's brushed aluminum in addition to the glass lens, and the brushed aluminum was selected to match the windows. As I said, we're replacing all of the windows with new windows to match the original exactly, except they'll be dual glazed. So these lights will be installed next to the north entry door along the driveway, and then the south side entry, the one that's adjacent to the Summit Medical Building. And then there's no lighting along that south elevation, along that sidewalk. So I'll show we're proposing several of these 4 additional sconces along that elevation. The middle image, light fixture E, is the brand is Eton, and those are wall-mounted sight lights. We didn't want to install additional pole lights in the driveway, but these lights will be mounted on the north elevation. They're 15 inches wide, 7 inches deep, but 8 inches high. They're curved. So they'll be installed on that north facade above the driveway. And these are LED lights that'll provide that 0.5 foot candle illumination both on the sidewalk and safe lighting along the driveway without having to put pole mounted light fixtures in the driveway next to the library. And then the last thing we're proposing are doorbells and card readers at the entry doors. So there are 5 entry doors. Each of these will have a new doorbell and card reader. These are 6 inches high, 10 inches wide. And basically, the doorbell will allow visitors to reach the people inside the different tenant spaces, and then the tenants will be able to swipe a card or have a card be read, which will unlock the exterior doors. So there'll be 5 of these. Next slide, please. Slide 16, this is the front elevation. And this is just showing where these lights are proposed to be and what signage exists and what's proposed. So as far as lighting, which the blue arrow points to the underside of that front portico entry, that's where that low-level light fixture would be proposed both for safety and also for an emergency light. That's that light that's it's a 10-inch wide LED fixture, that's 1.5 inches high. It's mounted on a 5-inch by 5-inch plate. There are 2 existing ground-mounted lights. If you've walked by this building at night, you've seen these floodlights in the ground next to the 2 large magnolia trees that are on the front lawn. Those floodlights are going to stay, but the lamps are going to be replaced with LED fixtures, LED bulbs. The signage, there's an existing fallout shelter sign. That's going to stay. There's one on this elevation and one on the north elevation. There's an existing street number right in the center, just below the portico that says 60. That's going to stay. And then there's one new 8-inch by 12-inch sign that will be mounted on the wall to the left of the entry doors. And that's going to state accessible entrance on driveway side with an arrow pointing to the driveway. So people needing to have the accessible entry will be pointed in the direction of the accessible entry on the driveway. Next slide, slide 17, please. Slide 17 is the north elevation. This is the elevation that faces that driveway. This also has, as far as signage, it has the existing fallout shelter sign. These are metal signs. We were told that they'd be difficult to remove, but we also don't want to remove them. There's a existing 18-inch by 16-inch handicap sign to the right of the door that has a wheelchair symbol and arrows. And then there's also an existing sign all the way at the right side of this north elevation, and that sign states Garden Club entrance, pointing people down the stairs to get to the Garden Club entrance, which is all the way on the right side, but at the lower level. We're proposing the doorbell and key card reader next to the entry door above the word signage. And then as far as the lighting, there are several existing light fixtures that will remain. Anything with the letter A towards the right side of this elevation. Those two doors that are shown solid and black, and shown dark gray or black. There are two basically nondescript light fixtures above those doors. They're in fine condition. They'll stay. And then at the entry stairs to the garden club, all the way to the right, where the stairs lead down to the lower level, there are three existing wall-mounted light fixtures that'll stay. And then there's an existing sign above the garden club sign. That's existing and will stay. There is the wall-mounted site lighting that I described before. Those are shown by letter E. There's 4 of them along this north elevation, and they're spread out to provide that safe illumination. They're pointing down. They're pretty nondescript light fixtures, but the beauty is that it'll allow us not to have to put in light poles in the parking lot. And then there are the wall sconces. There's one wall sconce proposed just to the right of the entry door at the top of the ramp. That's that brushed aluminum wall sconce that's 20 inches high. Okay, next slide, please. Slide 18 is the rear elevation. This is the elevation that faces the Avis Campbell Gardens. Only one new sign is proposed, and that's a small sign to be mounted to the left of the rear entry door, similar to the sign on the front of the building. It's 8 inches wide, 12 inches high, same size as a piece of paper, basically, and it will state accessible entrance on the driveway side with an arrow pointing to the left or to the driveway. There'll be a doorbell and key card reader next to this door. And then as far as lighting, there are several existing light fixtures. Those are labeled with the letter A. There are 2 light fixtures, one up above the center, all the way in the center, right at the top of the roof. There's an existing light. There's another light fixture just below the top window in the center of the building that the blue arrow is pointing to. And then there's a floodlight all the way on the right side of the building. That's an existing floodlight that's in good condition. That will remain. And then the last light fixture for this facade is the same light that's being proposed for the ceiling under the front portico. A new light fixture is proposed under this rear portico. It's a LED light pointing down, and it also serves as an emergency light with battery backup. Next slide, please, 19. 19, this is the south elevation, again, the elevation closest to Union Street. There's no lighting on this facade right now, and there is a sidewalk along this facade. So we're proposing several of the wall sconces, the light fixture type B, which is the 20-inch high light fixture, brushed aluminum to match the brushed aluminum on the windows. There's one existing light fixture, as you can see, above the word signage on the left side of the screen. It shows the faint outline of basements, exterior basement stairs that lead down to a mechanical room. There's an existing wall-mounted light fixture above those stairs, and that will remain. Next slide, please, slide 20. Slide 20, this is the roof plan. This shows the mechanical equipment on the roof. Currently, there's about 15 pieces of equipment on the roof, and all of those are going to be removed. The applicant worked with a mechanical designer in designing the new air conditioning equipment for this building. So there'll be 2 larger units sort of on the right side of this roof plan. Those are labeled as rooftop package units, and those would be surrounded by louvered screens to surround the view of those units. As it stated, there's the large slate roof structure, the penthouse in the front of the building that serves to screen the majority of this roof from South Fullerton Avenue. There's an elevator penthouse, there's the rear stair tower, but there will be new pieces of equipment on this roof, the 2 large rooftop units and then a lot of small condenser units. The units are range in height from 2 foot 6 inches high for those condenser units, and then the rooftop units are 4 foot high. And then some of the other items shown on this roof are exhaust fans for the bathrooms. So my opinion is that they will be screened as you could as you saw from those images in some of the earlier slides. Next slide, please. Slide 21. So that recaps what we're asking for. As I said, we're only asking for a certificate of appropriateness for specific items. So we're not here for the parking lot. We're not here for things like the trash enclosure or the garage. We're not here for any specific light fixtures on light poles. We're only asking for a certificate of appropriateness for what I described tonight. And that's the rooftop units, the louvered vents for the central air conditioning, the wall lights, several of the signs that apply to the handicapped access, repair of the ramp and the railing, and then the cell repeater. So that's all we're asking for. And as I wrote on the bottom here, we know that we will have to apply to the Development Review Commission for other items, some of the items that were on the list. And we also know that after the Development Review Commission, we will return to the Historic Commission to review those items. And so any questions, or David or Mark, do you want to say anything?
No. I don't need anything right now.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. That was a very comprehensive PowerPoint. And I'm glad you summarized what you were asking, the items that you wanted to focus on. So now why don't we open it up to the commissioners, and if they have any questions. Why don't we start with Steve? Mr. Rooney, do you have any questions?
Just a very comprehensive presentation, and I don't have any other questions.
Thank you. Mr. Reimnitz?
You're here to get the certificate of appropriateness for these window well covers too, and the card readers and a few other things. Those other things you mentioned.
Right. That's right. I just failed to mention the window covers and the card readers. Correct.
Okay, so I have 2 questions related to both of those. One, the card readers, are they recessed into the existing brick facade?
Jackson, can you answer that?
No, they're not. They're to be surface mounted.
Oh, great. I appreciate that. And then the window well covers, what are they made out of? What's the frame of those covers?
It's a composite.
It's a Is it white composite? Is it?
It's to be gray, similar in color to the windows.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Greenbaum?
I don't have questions, but I do want to compliment Mr. Sionis on the drawings where they show line of sight from various points around the property. I thought that was very helpful, and that's a very good visual tool to help us understand how one might see something that potentially could be unattractive. And you've basically made it clear from your drawings that you were sensitive to protecting the sight lines for the pedestrians. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. My question, I had the same question, I believe, as John, whether the card reader would be recessed or mounted. So I'm glad to see that it's going to be mounted. And then I think you testified that there's a sign on the front door that points to the parking lot and wheelchair or handicapped accessible. I think you said it's on the left of the door? Yes. Is that it there? What is there a reason that you can't put it to the right where it would make more sense, because aren't you directing people to the right?
That's correct. Yes. We're putting it there because it was under the fallout shelter sign, but it could be on the right because most people will be coming from the right. You're right, Kathleen.
Okay. That was my, that was my only question. Janice, is anybody online that wants to speak to this application?
No, we don't have any public that's interested in this.
Okay, thanks. So then why don't we open it up for discussion? Mr. Reimnitz.
I think Paul, as usual, has done a good job here and sensitive to the locations of penetration, the AC penetrations through the walls. I really don't have any problems with any of the new work. Some of the lighting that is existing that's on the brick coin corners is unfortunate, but that's existing, I guess. So I have no problem with this application at all.
Okay, thanks. And Mr. Rooney, do we ask you ready for your discussion points?
I don't have any problems with this.
Mr. Greenbaum?
I don't have any problems. Once again, thank you, Paul, for a diligent project.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think it's, I do know, having been in that parking lot, that it is extremely dark. So I'm glad to see that we're going to be offering some illumination. So this is a certificate of appropriateness. And I think you've answered all of our questions. So we, I don't think there's any conditions to granting this. Am I correct? Mr. Crowley?
The only condition I noted was moving the handicap sign to the right side of the door.
Okay, moving the sign.
Other than that, there's nothing.
Okay, so would someone like to make a motion to approve this certificate of appropriateness based on the one condition of moving the handicap sign to the right of the front door?
I move to accept the application as noted.
And second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then Janice, do you want to just do another, I guess,
Roll
call.
Do we need, yes.
Yeah, Miss Bennett,
Yes.
Mr. Rooney,
Yes.
Mr. Greenbaum,
Yes.
Mr. Reimnitz.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Really wonderful. I think it's going to be a huge improvement, great improvement to a beautiful building. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Good night.
Good night.
So next, Janice has put together the dates for our meeting for 2021. Was everyone able to look at that? I know 2021 seems so far in the future, doesn't it? But does anyone have any problems with any of the dates that were suggested? I did notice that September seemed to be pretty, I don't know, it seemed, I guess not. I guess it's the correct time. I don't know why. I guess maybe I was just thinking that this year can't end quick enough. But does anyone else have any comments about the meeting dates?
No.
Conflicts? No?
I think what's, very, very helpful is you can be any place and still attend these meetings at the moment. So I think that gives some flexibility here. So I don't have any problems with it.
Okay, that's true. Do we have to accept this, or is this just part it goes into the record?
You need to make a motion to approve it.
Okay, so can we have would someone like to make a motion to approve the Historic Preservation Commission meetings proposed list of 2021?
I move to accept the schedule as proposed.
Second?
Second.
Steve Rooney? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Thank you, everybody. Now, the final item is the discussion on crafting a resolution protocol for these virtual meetings. Janice had sent us a proposal that both the planning board and the Board of Adjustment are considering. I don't think they've voted on those yet, but they have those in the work. Am I correct, Janice? Have they voted on those yet, or?
They're at the next meeting, they'll be voting on them.
Okay, so we have a sample, and it was suggested that the HPC develop the same type of resolution. So I've asked Ira if he would craft something, just to put another thing on his list of to do, that he would craft something for us as our attorney that's similar.
I did that. I basically took the planning board one and substituted HPC and a few other smaller changes, to make it appropriate. But basically, it's the same.
Okay, thank you, Ira.
I could distribute that either tomorrow or Monday, depends on what's going on tomorrow.
Well, I think maybe we should hold off for the December meeting, when we get closer to the December meeting, because then, well, we do want comments back, maybe prior to the December meeting.
Janice can send it out to you all.
Okay, so maybe within the, after Thanksgiving, if Janice, if you could send that out, and then the commissioners could comment on it. Okay? Okay, wonderful. So that is the last thing on our agenda. Our next meeting, Janice, do you have the date for the next? I don't have my calendar with me. Do you have the date?
Yes, I do. Hold on. December 10th.
Right, I knew it was around then. Okay, great. So our next meeting is December 10th. Same time, same place. May I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second? Oh, okay. I think it's John and
Steve.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. All right. Good night, everyone. Stay safe. See you soon.
Thanks, Janice. Thanks, Ira.
Yeah, thanks, Janice. Thanks, Ira.
Okay.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.